Hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Phoenix Firestar Plays Kingdom Hearts. This one I will not be playing because this one is only cutscenes. So therefore I am just going to go through my handy dandy cliff notes here and essentially just tell you what happens. So this is a pretty simple, straightforward story here. It follows the story of Organization 13, who were the people behind the Castle Oblivion that Sora had to go through, and all the problems and heartache I had to deal with messing with those stupid cards. This takes place mostly like a bit before and a bit after and around the whole Castle Oblivion storyline. Now, Organization 13 is made up of nobodies who are essentially beings who have strong willpower, who lose their hearts. They maintain a form like this. It still looks human, but it's not. It's a it's see, I really think that the best term for them would have actually been the heartless, because they are the bodies without their hearts and emotions. They maintain their emotions and their feelings and everything from, or not necessarily their emotions, but they remember their past and everything that has happened to them and the things that they felt, but they no longer feel those things because they have lost their heart. So they are bodies without hearts, and then the heartless are really just hearts without physical form or emotion. Which is why I think they really should have switched the names Heartless and Nobodies. But anyway, I digress. Uh, Organization 13 is made up of 13 members. The higher your, or the lower your number, the higher up in rank that you are, compared to members of Organization 13. So, Organization 13 is led by the number 1, Zenmus. The second in command is Zigbar. And then, it kind of shifts around from there. But at the start of 358 by 2, it starts on day 255 of Axel and Roxas meeting together and sitting on top of the clock tower, which is Axel's, special place. And they are sharing sea salt ice cream, which has kind of become like a icon for this game. And Roxas begins to remember him living through the organization. Now, Roxas is a very unique member of Organization 13 because he also wields a Keyblade. And the reason he is able to do so is because he is Sora's nobody. Therefore, he has the power to control the Keyblade, just as Sora does. And Roxas is taken in and given the name Roxas from the name Sora. his name is rearranged and they add an X, which is usually what they do for every member of Organization 13. Is they take the name of the person of who they were, rearrange the letters, and add an X to them. Anyway, Roxas doesn't really take part in any of the organization's duties for many of his first days as a part of this organization. Though on his 7th day there, he is introduced to a 14th member of the organization. They are not an official member, but you know, they're there. So on the 8th day, Roxas and Axel are actually put on a mission together. If you remember Axel, he's the redheaded guy from Castle Oblivion from Chain of Memories. He and Axel are actually start to become friends, and it's interesting. It's probably because Nobodies do have their past memories, and Axel probably sees Ventus and Roxas. That's me inferring that there's no direct proof right now that is the reason why Axel takes so quickly to Roxas. And that is the first day that Axel shows Roxas his special place on top of the clock tower and gets them sea salt ice cream. But anyway, for the most part, it's just it follows the story of Roxas for the most part, doing various jobs and missions for Organization 13. He goes and trains with different members of the organization. Like he teams up with Marluxia, and Marluxia explains that the goal of Organization 13 is to collect hearts to build Kingdom Hearts. And the only person who could do this is Roxas, because he wields the Keyblade. He is the only member of the organization who can actually accomplish the goal. But because they do not have hearts, they actually explain to Roxas that they desire hearts more than anything else, and that's why they would do anything to get them. Let's see, and so quite a ways in, Roxas actually begins to wonder what friendship is, because, you know, most of his missions have been taking place in Twilight Town, that town from the end of Chain of Memories. And Axel tries to explain it to him that friends enjoy each other's company. And then, of course, a lot of this game, its days are just, you know, missions where nothing really happens. So, there's like 358 days worth of gameplay. Or a little less than that. But a lot of them are just running missions for the organization. And day 22 into Roxas being part of Organization 13 is when Axel and a few other members of Organization 13 are stationed in Castle Oblivion to carry out their plan against Sora. was shortly after this that Roxas is actually teamed up with that 14th member of the organization, whose name is Shion. She never really talks or says anything, and their first mission together is carried off in almost complete silence, minus probably Roxas trying to communicate with her but not getting anything out of her. It is the second time that they go on a mission, however, that she does speak to Roxas by saying his name first, and that is it. On their third mission together, Shion actually reveals what's underneath her hood, and that's the girl back there sitting on the Palpu tree. And she looks almost exactly like Kairi, but just different hair color, slightly different features, but other than that, she is Kairi by a lot of looks. And it is on this mission that she actually shows, to her surprise as well as Roxas, that she can actually wield the Keyblade herself as well. It is at this point that Roxas invites Shion to join him on top of the clock tower and gets her sea salt ice cream, where Shion says that she wishes to be friends with Roxas. Shortly after that, the members of organization receive word that the members of Organization 13 that were sent to Castle Oblivion have been wiped out, which upset Roxas because he had been friends with Axel. Which made Roxas start to question what is left of a nobody when they die. Because when Heartless are killed, they leave hearts behind. And when they explain to him that nobodies don't leave anything behind when they die, they vanish. It wasn't long after this, though, that Roxas falls into it and does not act for, which means Shion actually takes over Roxas's duties, being as she can wield the Keyblade. Shion takes over for quite a few days, and she begins to collect shells while she's out on her mission, and she sets them by Roxas's side every day. It isn't until about 25 days later, almost, that Roxas actually awakens from his coma. However, by the time Roxas wakes up, they still haven't heard back from anything from Castle Oblivion. It's a long time. It's almost 100 days into it's just a little after 70 days into Roxas's days as an organization member. The actual returns from Castle Oblivion. But he skips reporting in and actually goes to visit Roxas first to spend time with him. And the very next day, after returning, Axel reports that Naminé from Castle Oblivion had gone missing. And he tells Ceyx, who had sent him there to hunt down the traitors that he himself had personally seen to the death of a few members of the organization and had to take them out because they themselves were traitors. Then Shion ends up disappearing for a while. And after a few days, she finally returns, where she gets injured, meeting up with Axel and Roxas while they're on a mission. And when they question her where she's been, she tells them that she has lost the ability to use her Keyblade. And so Roxas decides to cover for her in order to make sure that the organization doesn't do anything bad to her because she's not doing her missions. By this time, Kingdom Hearts is starting to become full. You can actually make out its shape and everything right outside of the castle that never was, which is where the Nobodies generally hang out. That's their main headquarters. Castle Oblivion was actually more of a research station for them. But Axel brings up to Roxas and Shion that the two of them are strange for Nobodies because neither of them remember the person of who they were before they were Nobodies when they had hearts. Pretty much every other member of the organization remember who they were before they lost their hearts and became heartless, and then Nobodies. Quite a few days in, Shion finally regains the ability to summon the Keyblade. On day 117 of Roxas joining the organization, Axel is ordered to return to Castle Oblivion to try and find a secret chamber in which Zenmus, the leader of the organization, had hidden away his notes and journals and everything. Because they were beginning to some of the members of the organization were beginning to question what Zenmus's real goal was, because as the Nobodies didn't have hearts, none of them really trusted each other. About 150 days in, Zaladin tells Roxas that things that are important to someone can be their weakness, which makes him question Axel. And Axel says, well, people with hearts always have something that they cannot bear to lose. And that's what, and that can be something that can be exploited. But Roxas tells Axel that he can't remember anything that he'd be afraid to lose. But he's sure Demyx would be rather upset if someone took his sitar. So perhaps Nobodies can care for things even without hearts and find things important, because Roxas believes that Axel and Shion are the things that he would not be able to stand to lose. So through this, Roxas has actually begun to change. He is starting to care about things. His emotions are becoming more rounded. It's almost as if some of the Nobodies are beginning to gain hearts of their own just by forming these attachments and memories with each other. It wasn't long after this, though, that other members of the organization began to see Shion as nothing more than a burden and a waste of space because she was having a hard time completing missions, and she wasn't as strong a Keyblade wielder as Roxas was. Roxas tried to cheer her up, of course, but he said the wrong thing, and it upset her more when he's trying to explain that the two of them were special and were important to Organization 13. And so Shion actually separates from hanging out with Axel and Roxas for a while. And then 171 days into Roxas's days of the Organization 13, Axel returns from Castle Oblivion once again. And not long after Axel returns, Shion herself falls into a coma. Many days later, Shion awakens when Roxas starts putting shells around her bedside like she had done for him when he was in a coma. However, she still seems fairly weak and passes out when she tries to go out on a mission with Roxas. And Axel admits to the two of them that they are both his best friends. So, mostly more missions happen up until day 223, where Shion decides that she wanted to know about Castle Oblivion. Axel tries to quickly change the subject, suggesting that the three of them go to the beach on their next shared day off. Which they don't really seem to get many of those. They get like maybe one day out of the year, it looks like. Which would be rough. Shion actually begins to look into things on her own and sneaks around behind the organization's back, and she actually finds some research that had been done by Saix on Castle Oblivion. And this prompts Shion to actually go to Castle Oblivion herself. She finds a way to get there where she runs into Axel. And Axel tries to warn her not to go into Castle Oblivion. That if she did, only bad things could happen and it'd end up hurting her. Shion, however, refused to stop and ran off into Castle Oblivion, leaving Axel behind. Some time passes and Shion disappears. And Zenmis, the leader of the organization, declares that the Nobodies will waste no time or effort looking for Shion. It wasn't long after that Axel stops hanging out with Roxas so much, and disappears from stops hanging out at his place for a while. Almost 20 days pass from about 20 days pass from when Shion disappears. Roxas winds up on Destiny Island, where he believes he catches a glimpse of Shion while she's walking. What it turns out is Shion saw, but she was with quite a bit last we saw him. He had actually been in Castle Oblivion himself, running through basement floors, and took out several members of the organization while there, and trying to fight the inner darkness while Ansem tried to regain control of Riku's body, really flooding it with darkness again. Roxas manages to convince Axel that the two of them should begin to look for Shion and try and bring her back. So in secret, after their missions, they begin to visit all the worlds that they can, hunting for Shion. Not long after they start searching after they've searched all the locations that they can think of, Axel admits to Roxas that he knows that Shion initially came from Castle Oblivion. And Roxas, convinced that they have not looked there yet, argues with Axel that they should go there. Axel reluctantly agrees, but when they go there, Roxas begins to be flooded with memories of Sora. Or Sora's memories, and they begin to bombard him, causing extreme headaches. And Roxas starts to faint and pass out from this. And to protect Roxas, Axel actually grabs him and retreats from Castle Oblivion. Upon arriving back in Twilight Town from their trip to Castle Oblivion, they actually run into Riku and Shion. They try to give chase to the two of them, but they both disappear. The next day, Roxas runs into Shion again, begs Shion to return to the organization, that Zenmis will forgive her if she was just to return. However, she holds her keyblade up to him. She has decided not to return to the organization. Though when she raises her blade to Roxas, Axel actually attacks her and manages to knock her out and drags her by force back to the organization. And of course this makes Roxas upset with Axel that he would attack one of their friends like that. And so he actually starts giving Axel the silent treatment and refuses to talk to him. It is then that they reveal that Shion is actually absorbing the loose fragments of memory from Sora and adding them to herself. And as long as she's around, Sora will never wake up from his sleep because his memories will never be complete. Not long after, Shion actually returns back to duty and meets up with Roxas, but once again does not say anything to him like she had done all that time ago. Shortly after, Roxas passed. And this begins to, and Roxas begins to weaken over time, and Shion begins to become much stronger. While Roxas is still mad at Axel, Axel tries to explain to him that Shion is actually absorbing Roxas' strength and making herself stronger, essentially feeding off of it. Roxas doesn't quite get it at the time. Not long after, Organization 13 begins to talk about their plan that Shion and Roxas are both important to it, but they need only one of them. Of course, Roxas didn't really attend this meeting. But they know that the time is coming where they would launch the final phases of their plan, and that the device that they're going to use to enact it is close at hand. And then Shion begins to think about what Riku had told her when they had met up on Destiny Island. Riku had told her everything, that she was a creation, essentially like a clone, a mirror, built in Castle Oblivion, who absorbed the memories of Riku, and because the memories of Kairi were so important to Sora, and that's what she absorbed, that's why she ended up looking like Kairi. And he explains to her that is the reason why she looks the way she does, while she's able to use the Keyblade, and that while she exists, Sora is unable to wake up. And if she were to give up her memories, if she was to give those memories back, she may no longer come to exist because of it. Meanwhile, Roxas begins to have problems on a mission where he comes across a particularly powerful Heartless. However, what may have been the final attack again between him and the Heartless, Axel steps in and stops the attacks from either side. this happens to break whatever illusion or spell was on Roxas, and when he looks up, he had been fighting Shion the entire time. The two of them had been tricked into fighting one another. Axel gets in trouble with this from the rest of the organization, saying that they don't need both of them. They only need one of them. And that it was unwise to try and save the two of them, especially when one of them is nothing more than a puppet. Though missions start to go back to normal when Shion, Axel, and Xigbar are sent on a mission with one another. However, Xigbar happens to catch a glance of Shion without her hood up, and what he actually sees is Ventus. And him and Shion actually end up fighting. Shion beats Xigbar and runs away, abandoning the organization once again. Axel is then ordered to retrieve Shion. Of course, this upsets Roxas, and he tries to ask Axel why, and Axel explains to Roxas that Shion is nothing more than a creation by the organization who found its own identity from the memories of Sora, but it was feeding off of Roxas's abilities, his skill, everything. As Shion got stronger, she was actually weakening Roxas. And that the plan was that she was supposed to replace him and would be easier to control than Roxas. Of course, Roxas had a hard time wrapping his head around this. The biggest part that the organization was mad about with Axel is because by this point Roxas had become pretty much useless, because Shion had taken most of his strength by this point. And the name Sora had been popping up so much between his memories and Zenmis having told Roxas that him and Shion were connected through Sora. Zenmis doesn't really do much on the way of explaining to Roxas who Sora is exactly. And when Roxas confronts Axel about this, he actually gets mad at Axel because Axel won't tell him much either, and begins to question his friendship with Axel before quitting the organization himself. Shion actually manages to meet up with Naminé by this point. This is about 356 days into Roxas's story now. And she states to Naminé that she wishes to return back to being Sora's memories. That she knows that's the place where she belongs, even if everyone else will forget that she had ever existed. However, after meeting with Naminé, she's actually taken by force by Axel once again, where he drags her back to the organization before fainting himself, having fought her to essentially the point of his own limits. It is not long after this that Roxas and Riku run into each other, and they have their big fight. Sorry, I skipped a bit there. After bringing Shion back to the organization, Axel, Shion is put back on her regular duties again. But when she meets up with Roxas while they're up on the clock tower, she explains to Roxas that her only duty is to absorb Roxas until only one of them existed. And she actually attacks Roxas up on top of that clock tower. After a long fight, Roxas kills Shion. However, as she's dying, she states that she is finally those memories of Sora's were finally going to return to him. And Roxas' strength will return to him as well. She states it's okay if everyone forgets her. Because she is going back to where they belong. Where she belongs. And that Axel and Roxas were her best friends, and that she would always miss them. But they would be better off when she was gone. But she makes Roxas promise to her, telling him, "You may not be. I'm ready to return to Sora, but you may not be. I need you to do me a favor. Destroy Kingdom Hearts. Do not let the Nobodies, not let Organization 13 control Kingdom Hearts. Do not let them have it." So Roxas tries to storm Castle Oblivion, or not Castle Oblivion, but the castle that never was, the Nobodies' headquarters, where Kingdom Hearts is being constructed. However, before he gets there, he is stopped by Riku. Riku and Roxas actually have this big epic fight with one another. Until finally, Riku is forced to tap into the powers of darkness and take on Ansem's abilities and knock Roxas unconscious. And that would be about where the story would end. However, Roxas wakes up, but he's not a member of Organization 13. He is just a kid living in Twilight Town. He doesn't remember the organization. He doesn't know that he's a nobody. And that's where things end. And that's where it falls into Kingdom Hearts 2. I'll see you all next time on the next episode for Kingdom Hearts lore. This is Phoenix Fire.